scariest stories are whispered, not told.
I've always loved the 4th of July. Growing up, it meant grilled food, cold drinks, fireworks, and that strange in-between moment just before the sun dipped below the trees, when everything was quiet for a second. That second always felt magical. But this story isn't about magic. It's about the last time I ever spent a 4th of July with friends. The night I realized something was living out there in the woods, and it didn't want us to leave. This happened last year. I was 24. My childhood best friend Matt had invited me, along with a few others, to his family's lake house in upstate New York. He'd been asking for years, but things never worked out. Someone always bailed, or I had to work. But this time, everything aligned. The plan was simple. 4 of us, me, Matt, his cousin Lindsay, and our mutual friend Jake, would drive up Friday evening and stay until Sunday afternoon. Fireworks, beer, barbecue, canoeing, maybe even some night swimming. It was supposed to be perfect. And for a while, it was. We arrived just after 7 p.m. on the 3rd of July. The sun was setting over the tree line as we unloaded our stuff from Matt's Jeep. The lake house looked exactly like what you'd expect. Wood-paneled, old but sturdy, nestled in the trees right on the water. No neighbors for miles. Total seclusion. That night was uneventful in the best way. We drank beer on the dock, watched fireflies, and shared dumb stories from college. Around midnight, we went inside, played cards until we couldn't keep our eyes open, and crashed. I took the guest room on the 2nd floor. There was a big window facing the lake. I left it open to let in the night air. The gentle sound of water lapping against the dock lulled me to sleep. But around 3 a.m., I woke up, and I swear I heard someone whisper my name. I sat up immediately. The room was dark. No breeze, just the soft creak of the house settling. "Matt?" I whispered. No response. I got up, walked quietly down the hall. Everyone's doors were shut. I told myself I was dreaming. Sleep paralysis or something. I climbed back into bed, rolled over. Then I heard it again. Only this time it came from outside the window. The next morning I didn't mention it. No one else seemed to have heard anything. We made breakfast, went canoeing, grilled burgers for lunch. Everything felt normal. But that night, things changed. We were sitting by the fire pit when Jake pointed to the trees. "Did you see that?" "See what?" Matt asked. "Something moved, over there." We all stared, but the trees were still, quiet. Jake insisted he'd seen someone, a figure, standing between the trees. We laughed it off, joked that he was just jumpy. But when I went inside to grab more drinks, I looked out the kitchen window, and there was something, just standing there, at the edge of the woods, too far to make out clearly, but it was tall, human-shaped, still. I blinked, and it was gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2:53 a.m., I heard scratching under my window, not like an animal, too deliberate, like someone dragging their fingers across the siding. I got up, shut the window, locked it, drew the curtains. 10 minutes later, I heard footsteps on the dock, slow, measured. I peeked out between the curtains. There was a person standing on the end of the dock, completely still, facing the house. I ran to wake Matt, but by the time we got back to my room, the dock was empty. July 4th was hot, the kind of sticky, oppressive heat that clings to your skin. We spent most of the day inside, playing games and trying to pretend nothing weird had happened the night before. But something had shifted. Lindsay was quieter. Jake kept glancing at the windows. Even Matt seemed tense. Around sunset, we decided to light fireworks down by the lake. Matt set up some Roman candles and sparklers on the dock. I held a lighter in one hand and a beer in the other, trying to force myself into celebration mode. Then the first firework went off, and in the brief explosion of red and green light, I saw them. Not one figure, 3, standing at the edge of the woods, watching us. We didn't say anything, not at first. Then Jake muttered, "You all saw that, right?" We nodded. Matt grabbed a flashlight and stormed toward the tree line, yelling, "Who the hell's out there?" No answer, just the sound of wind in the leaves. He swept the light across the trees. Nothing. We tried to go back to normal, but it was impossible. Lindsay went inside early. Jake stayed up with me and Matt, but no one said much. Around 1 a.m., we decided to pack it in. I locked my window this time, pulled the shades, but I still couldn't sleep. At 3:17 a.m., I woke up. Not from a noise, from a smell. Something rotten, like wet leaves and old meat. I sat up, and my skin went cold. My door was open. I swear I'd shut it. I stood slowly, heart pounding. The hallway was dark, silent. Then I heard it. From downstairs, something, humming. A low, warbling tone, almost like a voice. I crept down the stairs, trying not to breathe. The living room was empty. The kitchen light was flickering, and the front door was wide open. I woke the others. Everyone was accounted for. No one had gone outside. Matt shut the door, locked it, and shoved a chair under the handle. We stayed up until sunrise, backs to the wall, clutching fireplace pokers and kitchen knives. Nothing happened. We left that morning, cut the trip short. No one argued. I never went back. Matt sold the lake house a few months later, said he couldn't sleep there anymore. Jake moved out west. Lindsay stopped replying to texts. I haven't spoken to any of them in nearly a year, but I still think about that weekend, especially when I wake up at 3:17 a.m. Sometimes I still hear the humming, and sometimes I leave the window open just to see if they'll come back. It happened last summer. We were just 4 old friends trying to escape the city heat and relive a bit of our high school youth. Me, Nate, Chris, and Jamie, tight since sophomore year. Every 4th of July, we made a point to reconnect, like clockwork. This year, Nate offered something different. A getaway at his family's old lake house, secluded, no phone signal. Trees so thick you couldn't see the sky in some spots. The kind of place where time felt like it slowed down. Sounded perfect. We left Friday evening, windows down, music blasting, a cooler full of beer and fireworks in the trunk. The drive was long and winding, dirt roads that looked more like hiking trails than streets. When we finally arrived, the sun was just dipping beneath the horizon, casting the lake in deep orange and purple tones. It was beautiful, but also strange. Quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful, like the trees were holding their breath. The house hadn't changed much since we were kids. Old wood siding, a creaky porch, and that rickety dock that stretched out into the lake like a crooked finger. But something about it felt off. Not visibly, but instinctively. like the house didn't want us there. That first night was nothing special. Campfire, a few drinks, bad ghost stories. Nate lit a couple of those off-brand fireworks and almost set a pine tree on fire. We laughed it off and passed out around 1 a.m. At least, most of us did. It was around 3 in the morning when Chris shook me awake. His face was pale, eyes wide with something I didn't recognize. Real fear. "There's someone on the dock," he whispered. I sat up, groggy. Nate grumbled from the couch. "What is it, a ghost? Go back to bed." But Jamie and I got up. We followed Chris out to the back windows, the ones facing the lake, and there it was. A figure standing at the end of the dock, still facing the water. Just there. I squinted into the dark. No movement. No swaying. The wind was still, and so was the figure. I turned on the flashlight and aimed it toward the dock. The light caught something. Eyes, maybe. They reflected back like glass, but without a face around them. No features. Just a smooth, pale surface and those reflective spots. It didn't flinch. Then it stepped off the dock into the water. It didn't sink. The lake's edge is shallow for maybe 10 feet, but it just kept walking, waist deep, chest deep, shoulders, and it never struggled, never swayed. The water barely rippled. It just faded into the lake like it belonged there. We locked the doors and sat awake until sunrise. The next morning, Nate brushed it off. "You guys were half drunk and saw a deer or something." Even Chris started second-guessing. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe we got worked up. So we moved on. We set up for the 4th, grilled burgers, prepped the fireworks, tried to enjoy the sun. But none of us really felt normal. There was an unspoken tension, like we were all pretending a little too hard. That night, it came back, but it didn't come alone. There were 3 of them this time, standing at the end of the dock, and a 4th in the woods, closer. Nate saw them first. He didn't say anything. He just turned off the music, shut the windows, and said, "Nobody goes outside tonight." I watched from the corner of the window. The forest figure moved when we moved. If one of us even approached the glass, it stepped closer to the tree line. The dock figures would turn their heads. Not fully, just slightly, enough to feel wrong. They never tried the doors, never knocked, but they stayed, circling the house like they were waiting for something. Silent, unmoving, like statues in the wrong place. By 4 a.m. they were gone, just vanished. But on the porch, fireworks, 3 boxes, lined neatly like a gift. Each one had a name carved into the lid. Chris, Jamie, Nate. Mine wasn't there. That's when Nate said it. "We're leaving. Now." No one argued. We packed what we could and left before the sun was fully up. No one said a word on the drive back. Just the hum of tires and the sound of our own breathing. We tried to laugh it off over the next few days, blamed it on stress, alcohol, maybe group hallucination. But deep down, we all knew something was wrong. 1 week later, Chris went missing. We called the police. We called his family. Flyers were posted. Searches were organized. Nothing. Then Jamie disappeared. 2 weeks after Chris. His car was found on a service road near a forest preserve. Keys in the ignition. Door open. No sign of him. I still remember the voicemail I left him. And Nate? He lasted until the following summer. He took his own life. They found him in his apartment. No note. Just a box of unused fireworks under his bed. One of them had my name on it. I visit his grave every year. Me, I'm still here, still waiting.